was, I think yesterday we were speaking mostly to the people in internal comms function, and that's, I think, a function of our window into cabling, because we're looking at cabling through the eyes of, what's her name? Anna McClear, right? Yeah. And she's pretty new to cabling. And I found myself yesterday gravitating more and more, away from that view of the business to the sort of view into the business that we're not really seeing or addressing. And I here to hear me. Oh, is he? No, he isn't. To hear me say that. And I don't know whether it's a function of being in Portugal and particularly in Lisbon, but I have been sort of trying to get into the sadness within cabling. The saudades. And so I found this verse from a fado song that it seems to me, my Portuguese is terrible by the way, it seems to me expresses something of what we need to do in order to address the situation in cabling. So I'm not going to say that this is a translation, it's more of an interpretation of this verse. And please don't laugh. So, I miss the person I used to be. Is that okay? I miss the thing I loved above all other things. Still, okay? But now my song is of an uncharted territory. I'm singing of the sea and the earth, my fate, my fado, my knowledge audit fado. So I'm Irish, so I think we feel a little bit, we understand a little bit of saudades. But it seems to me that yesterday we were kind of missing the point of cabling, because cabling is in the midst of saudades, and saudades is not, I think it's a place between places. You're looking back to something that was familiar and safe and comfortable, and you're in the midst of complexity and uncertainty and stuff you don't understand, but you're trying to go somewhere and do something. So it's a place of change. And yesterday when we talked about change and change management, it was about how do we get our people to use the software we put in. But change in this situation is the thing that drives us to the need for tools. Something you told us yesterday, right? At the beginning of the day. Change is the thing that is the situation we're trying to cope with and the people we're trying to work with towards a new territory, a new reality, a new something. Where is the sadness in cabling? The pain. Where is it? I mean, there is some in internal comms, to be sure. But where is the heart of that sadness? I think so. I would say so. We didn't, Mango Apps looked at the factory floor and making sure that you have a device that factory workers can use. We don't really know if they actually are the type of people who would use those devices and those apps, but at least you looked at them, and their access to knowledge. You looked at that, inside, outside the company. But I think everybody else, we're looking at the internal comms function and Anna, because she's the loudest voice in the room. And the point of a knowledge audit is to make sure that the loudest voice in the room is not the only voice in the room, that we hear from the other voices in the company to find the heart of the pain that we need to address. With our tools, certainly, and also with our processes and our assistance. Now, half of me says, the vendors shouldn't feel bad about this because, you got to show off really great stuff. I mean, the tools are fantastic. The technical problems you've solved, the usability problems you've solved, beautiful stuff. The other half of me feels you should feel bad about this because, after all, this is Fado. And if you don't feel bad, it's not working. And we need, actually, as consultants and as we sell services, as technology vendors, you sell technology, we need to feel the sadness in the client and the pain in the client. I was a little bit concerned yesterday that a couple of you said, we don't do the change management ourselves, we get a consulting firm to do that for us. So you're separating yourself from the pain and the intimacy, the knowledge of the pain. And so it's hard for you to shape your solution to address that pain if you separate yourself from it, so absolutely. Okay, knowledge audit, I said, is a way of making sure that we can find our way to the heart of sadness. By the way, this is a Fado knowledge audit. There are happier ones. So we're going to focus on pain and sadness today. The process we take is typically like this. We look at three things. Three core things. The first one is we want to find pain points around the use of knowledge and information flows in the organization. The second is that we want to understand the behaviors and the values that are operating in the organization because we want to understand where people are now, the landscape they see now, the things they have to deal with now, and that helps us figure out how they get to where they need to go next. And we need to understand the nature of the knowledge and the information that needs to move and be supported. We can't solve all the problems. And if it's not just an internal comms problem, what is the problem? What is the knowledge that needs to move, that we need to focus on in providing our tools? So those are the three things we do. Now, I did a spot audit with Anne McClear. She's a lovely lady, by the way. I've got nothing against her. It's just that we need more insight than this. So I have to say, the knowledge audit sort of rough outline that I reach is only a partial one based on her experience of the company. In a full audit, we'd have to talk to, the engineering folks, the factory floor folks, the strategy guy, the business development guy, McChief himself, as to where he wants to take the company. So that's the health warning on this. First thing is pain points. We use a pack of cards. We take it to all of the key functions, the voices we want to hear from. The cards cover three types of problem in an organization relating to knowledge and information use. The first problem is coordination, flow of knowledge and information. Right? Does the right hand know what the left hand is doing? The second one looks at the memory of the organization, its ability to continue doing tomorrow what it was able to do today. And there are explicit knowledge components of that. Are we keeping good records of our decisions and our processes and our plans? And the other is a tacit dimension. Do we still have the skills and experience in our people to deliver this kind of project that we delivered last year? And if we don't, then obviously we need to address that problem, right? We need to make sure we continue to have those skills and experience levels as people is learning, the ability to take in new insight and information and knowledge from the external environment and adapt ourselves and change the way we work. And these are actually core functions of organizations, knowledge functions of organizations, which are also, actually, if you think about it, functions that we learn as babies. Right? We learn how to coordinate hand and eye. We learn how to remember stuff that's important, and we learn how to adapt as babies. It's just more complicated in organizations because we have one brain, but organizations have lots of brains, all competing with each other. So these are the places for pain points that emerge. So I took Anne McClear through this exercise, particularly looking at the incidents she talks about on her blog. And for sure, there's a coordination pain point around communication and information flows. But most of the pain points sit around the organizational memory issue, both explicit organizational memory and tacit organizational memory. So anybody who comes with a tool, if it's my budget, and doesn't show me and explain to me how you're going to help me address this problem, not that keen on spending a lot of money on it. And then the secondary problem, of course, is learning, agility, dealing with change. And we already have clues from CableLink that there are issues there around dealing with change, particularly in relation to the factory floor. And Steve McGreasy, the head of factory operations, who I notice has recently been dropped from the organizational chart. You notice he wasn't on any of the charts yesterday. Now, he set up that factory floor 20 years ago. How do you think he feels? So that's pain points. Second one, we want to look at the cultural side of it. And since we're talking about Steve McGreasy, we have a pack of cards for that too. By the way, these are kind of developed out of several years of conducting pain points audits, culture audits with lots of organizations. And what we discover is that human beings are infinitely diverse, but have similar patterns of behavior. So these represent patterns of behavior. This again is based on Anna's input. We found with Anna three kind of dynamics in the culture. First of all, you've got the sort of driving towards expansion and strategic development, opening new factories, expanding from manufacture to services, projects and so on. It's all of that stuff that is driving the business and stressing it, to be frank. And then you've got these kind of negative defensive behaviors. You've got Cheap Eric over here, who's the managers on the factory floor really just, they're measured on their results and their outputs, so they're not concerned really about the bigger picture about whether machines are going to break down next week or something. They just got to get their output today. And you've got Oscar the loner, who is feeling defensive and encloses himself and makes his work less visible to you the more you attack him. Steve McGreasy is getting all the blame, and his colleagues are getting all the blame for the faults and the problems. And yet we're not including them in the audit and the inquiry as to how to solve. We're not trying to understand where those guys are so that we can help them move to the new territory. You've got the squirrel, who is working in such a messy information environment that he amasses his own private resources to do the work he needs to do, or she for that matter. There are female squirrels as well. And that's fine, except that the squirrel is not eager to share this stuff because he or she doesn't know whether it's actually, going to work for you. And if I share it with you and it's the wrong stuff, I get into trouble for it. So I'm defensive about that. You've got the earthworm, who is a victim of poor communications, is just trying to get along, and all these things come along that he's not informed about. He keeps bumping into and gets injured. It affects morale. And you've got other characters going on there as well. But also, these are kind of the negative levers in the culture. These are the positive ones. You've got the experienced people who are willing to share. I don't really understand what kind of sharing they're comfortable with. I need to find out more about that, whether it's more person to person or whether they are actually people who would log on to intranets and contribute to forums. I don't know that yet, but it would be useful to know. You've got Junior Jane, who's the junior engineer who's come in, being given a huge project with lots of consequences and impact and very little support or help or background resources to help. And then you've got these positive characters who are all ready to go get. And then you've got the pirates. You remember the junior engineers have been meeting in an informal community of practice in the cafeteria. So they've got this positive energy to share and develop their knowledge. But because there's no infrastructure or process for them to do it, they're doing it on their own. They're solving technical problems amongst themselves without supervision in the cafeteria. Those technical problems impact your business. So those pirates need to be legitimized and brought into the fold in some way. So I think these are leverage points. And when we think about tools in particular, I'm not thinking now about processes that need to happen. When we think about tools, actually a large part of that cultural dynamic you are absolutely not going to touch without some process of change in the organization. So if you want immediate impact, if you want to make a sale this year, it's important to focus on the bits of the culture where you can add value, right? And that seems to me to be around where the leadership is taking you, the pain that these people are feeling that can be solved through information kinds of technologies and processes, and harnessing the positive energy that you have in the organization. So limit the audience. The audience, by and large, is not an internal comms audience. It's people who are in pain now around specific work tasks with specific areas of knowledge deficit to solve specific problems for the business. Again, health warning. This is just from Anne McClear. We need to verify this more broadly. And those are the people I would focus on, actually. I'd focus on the areas of risk. And Victoria touched on this yesterday when you spoke about quality. Focus on the stuff in the operation that impacts quality and the problems with these types of behaviors that you want to reshape and support with new tools that they might be inclined to use. Third thing we want to do is we want to understand the nature of the knowledge that needs to move and be shared. And this is what we call a knowledge asset inventory, trying to understand the types of knowledge that are being used in the organization. We use a framework with 6 broad knowledge types ranging from quite explicit documents and data types to things like skills and competencies. Methods refers to the implicit knowledge that is embedded in the routines and ways of working in an organization that are probably not documented, but represent an important part of an organization's knowledge. This team has been doing this job for the last 10 years. They've evolved efficient and effective ways of working. That's important knowledge. If that team leaves all at once, you're dead. And then on the more tacit end, you've got the experiential knowledge that's built up over years. And you've got the relationship knowledge, the people who know who to contact to solve which problems. And they can call on them and get help straight away because there's a relationship of familiarity and trust. It's not simply a matter of having a directory of who knows what. It's also the process and the relationships behind that that allows you to call on knowledge and be assured that you will get good responses that will be useful to you. And then you've got natural talent, which is the unique stuff that comes with individuals. And I did do a little practice exercise with Anne McClear around what seemed to me like a core important activity that the leadership might be interested in, opening a new factory. And these are the types of things that you might find in those areas of knowledge. Now, what will be immediately clear to you, I'm sure, is that some of those forms of knowledge are more accessible to being supported with the tools we looked at yesterday, and some of them are less accessible. So if you want to look at things like documents and data, very obvious. Steps for project planning and execution, process for project communications. We need to figure out how that gets communicated to people who need to know it, right? So maybe there's a process of documentation, easy documentation of stuff. Okay, I can see a role for tools there. Skills, I want to be able to track from a leadership point of view. I need to know what people need to know, the skills they need to have. What are my skills deficits? And where can I help people get access to skills? So it's a kind of a finding, matchmaking function. Okay, a tool can help me there. But I need processes behind that around actually delivering learning to people and making sure they have the skills to do their work. Some of this stuff in the experience side can be supported with tools, and some of it cannot. Some of it is just stuff we learn in the real world, in the physical spaces of work. So just because we have an expertise finder and a discussion and a question and answer forum on our intranet does not mean that we have solved the experience and expertise problem. And if your tools have soaked up the entire budget of cabling and there is no money left to do the other important stuff, and this turns out to be the critical stuff for opening new factories, the stuff that means make or break for cabling, then your tool in the long run has failed. So thinking about the bigger picture, which is the purpose of a knowledge audit, is to get a sense of the landscape, the situation, and the pain in that landscape, so that the voyage can continue to a more happy place. Thank you very much.